Hi guys, you like my hat? Since I'm dreading my hair, I need to wear hats to make the roots dread. That's what I've been told. And I've never really worn hats because it makes my hair messy. But now that's the point. So tonight I'm gonna wear a hat. So I'm thinking that tonight we will do spaghetti squash pasta, and I will show you how easy that is to make. And I'm gonna do 2 big spaghetti squashes, and when I'm cooking one, it's easy to just cook 2. Why not 2? And I usually end up being able to put a whole half of what I make into a freezer bag, and then the next time I want to make spaghetti squash, I don't have to chop these beasts in half and bake them. I just pull it out of the freezer and add it to what I'm cooking. So I will show you how I do that, and we will have a delicious dinner. Hopefully I can do this a little more streamlined and low-key and low stress than I did last night, because my first video while cooking a big meal, it got a little intense. It took kind of a long time. Here we go. To prep the spaghetti squash and get it ready to put in the oven, which all I'm gonna have to do is bake it, you take the spaghetti squash, wash it off, and then you take a really big knife and you cut it in half. This isn't easy. It's really preferable if you have a big strong man around. It's okay, if you made it look too easy, then nobody would believe you. They wouldn't know what they were getting in for.
Ta-da!
Thank you. Yes. Very big, strong man. It works. So after thoroughly thinking your cooking assistance, you just scoop out the middle, and then you place it on the tray with a little bit of water on the inside. I put water on the inside so that it doesn't dry out. I don't think everybody does that, but I like it to kind of boil from the inside as well as cook from the outside at the same time. And then I'll show you what to do when it's done. So to go in the spaghetti squash, to make it a pasta dish, a vegetable pasta dish, we've got lots of different kinds of mushrooms, cabbage, because it's just great filler, it's cheap, and it just absorbs the flavor of whatever you want it to taste like, and it's crunchy and it's really delicious. Onions, big old carrots, these are good if they're bigger. And I was just gonna throw in a little bit of zucchini and squash just for color and content. So I'll be chopping those up, and I'll see you back in a couple minutes. Okay, so I've chopped up all of our veggies. Our spaghetti squash is in the oven, and now we move on to putting everything in the wok. So I've got some coconut oil going, and onions, some carrots, and celery. I'm gonna add more of this is carrots, a zucchini, a squash, and half a head of cabbage. And keep in mind I'm cooking for 6 people. You don't have to chop this much if you only have, say, 2 adults and 3 children, or something along those lines. Gonna mix this up. As it starts to cook down, I'm gonna add mushrooms, and I'll let you know when we move on to the next phase. We're reaching the end of the wok cooking. I've been stirring it around. I've added some seasoning as I went. This is my homemade seasoning. And I moved the bulk of the cooked vegetables aside and put in mushrooms, or the new vegetable, down in there at the bottom. And then I cover it up. I let that cook for a couple minutes before I stir it in, and that allows it to get some attention and some heat. So everything's pretty cooked. The spaghetti squash is about to come out of the oven, and I'm realizing that I'm gonna need to pick a protein. So checked out the freezer. We've got some chicken breasts, we've got some cod and some salmon, but I thought tonight with the pasta it would be a good time to do shrimp. I was considering making broccoli as a side, but I can't think of an idea that currently works with what I'm doing. So I'm just going to use some shrimp from Costco, and they're already peeled and deveined and cooked, and just gonna have to warm them up and toss them with some seasoning. So, that's my solution. I've put the shrimp into a pot, and I always put a lid on top just because even if it doesn't fit, it holds the heat in so that my frozen shrimp will start to thaw. Now I'm going to add spinach into this. I'm going to move all of my vegetables aside and expose some fresh real estate at the bottom and just start putting in handfuls of spinach. Spinach will cook down a lot, so you kind of just have to keep adding as it cooks down. So I put the spinach in and now I'm covering it up, opening up a new space to put in a lot more spinach. And then I cover that up so that that cooks too. I'll give that a couple minutes to cook that spinach down, and then I'll stir it up. I'll see what ratio of green spinach to all the other vegetables I have, and I might add more underneath of all the other vegetables. Now we just need to get the spaghetti squash out of the oven, start to let it cool so that I can show you what we do. I just pulled the spaghetti squash out of the oven and it's still full of water, and the tray is full of water from water that dripped down. So I love these gloves. They're waterproof and they're actually protect my hands from heat. So I'm gonna dump off the water from the spaghetti squash, allow it to cool faster. And the whole tray is full of water. So dump that off too. So all of this, I can pour it right over my gloves. I put this squash in the oven with water in it so that it didn't like really crispify and burn anything. And it was at 350 for about 40 minutes. I just went in with a fork and poked and made sure that it felt not like hard raw squash, but like something that I could stick a fork in. It's ready, and now I've got to let it cool down a little bit, but I will show you how I'm gonna turn this spaghetti squash into pasta. So I've got a large serving fork, and all you have to do to make spaghetti squash into spaghetti is you hold it, and you can feel it's mashable. I like to mash it a little bit before I start. You can see it start to break up. See it starting to break up into strings. Not really focusing. You can see it starting to break up into strings. So if you take this with your fork and you start scraping it, it starts turning into what looks kind of like angel hair pasta. So that's all you do. You just scrape it. So I'm gonna scrape that directly into my wok. There we go. So my wok is full of spaghetti squash now and vegetables. I would say that each half of a large spaghetti squash is probably half of a box of regular spaghetti if you're used to. So if your family you only cook half the box of spaghetti per meal, then only expect to use a half of a spaghetti squash for a dinner, as long as it's a big spaghetti squash. These are pretty big. If you usually make a whole box of spaghetti, you may not need that much for your family if you add this many vegetables to it, but maybe you really like leftovers like we do. These two I'm gonna peel off and break up and put into the meal tonight, and then those two I'm gonna put in a bowl and let cool down, and I will put them into a Ziploc bag. So those two are done. This is ready to be stirred in. I can turn that off, and I will show you this is what I did the last time I made spaghetti squash. This just says spaghetti squash on it. Focus on my face. Here's my spaghetti squash. It's my spaghetti squash. This is from the beginning of November, and I just did exactly what I did here. And I put it in a Ziploc bag, and then I laid it flat in the freezer, and I put everything else on top of it, and it froze. And now, if I want to make spaghetti squash and I don't want to have to go through this, all I do is let this thaw. I would have used this if I wasn't making videos for you guys tonight, but it's not very informative to just thaw something I've already made. So, I will now have 2 rounds of spaghetti squash pre-made, and now you know how to do it too. Everything's ready now. Tonight I just made the veggie pasta, spaghetti squash pasta, and shrimp. So I get out my display plate and I put in a big helping serving of my beautiful food. Oh, and throw it all over myself, of course. And then I got my shrimp. I'll put on top. And I'll probably put some cashew sour cream on top, but Mom, don't laugh at me. You're gonna make me laugh. Okay. There we go. Is that better? I don't even know if that looks good or fancy. Camera, what do you think? Anyway, there we are. Here's my dinner for tonight. And I hope I've inspired you guys to feel a little more comfortable in the kitchen around produce. Have a good night.